I think I started writing with a specific question in mind because that helps me when I want to create a story. And my question was, in this case, is it possible to love all the different parts of myself? So not only the parts that I'm sort of proud of and that I like to present to others and the outside world, but also the parts that I'm more ashamed of and I'm nervous about and are flawed. And so I wrote it as a tribute to sort of trying to become a little more your authentic self.
Because I saw Instinct, which was just such a unusual, bold film, and we started talking and texting, and we were circling something else. But meanwhile, she was doing. I mean, we had a Zoom when you were doing bodies.
My little hotel room in Chappaqua.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm doing this. And we were talking about things, and then she was subsequently working on Baby Girl. It was her first. I didn't realize this. This was the first thing you actually wrote all by yourself.
Yes.
So it came. She sent it to me, and then we started. Immediately, I said yes. I did, because the script was so powerful. It was a really, really sort of first draft, wasn't it?
Very early.
Not first.
Very early.
Yeah. So she kept saying, no, I'm going to work on this and I want to do that. But for me, it was so, it was just such an extraordinary piece of writing that I was like, I so want to do this with you.
I really loved the script, and I knew that Nicole was playing Romy, which is obviously like very exciting for an actor to be able to do that with someone like Nicole. I loved Helena's films, and I think from the moment we spoke, we spoke about this already, but I was a little bit scared because there was so much there, and I was like, I don't know how I would even do this, and that kind of excited me as well, you know. So I just loved that there was humour and nuance and stuff that I'd never read before.
I mean, I think she's in a place of crisis. So her true power, I think she's achieved an enormous amount, yet she's still having all of this inner conflict in terms of what she actually wants. Her power is she can do everything. She can actually do it, but is she being authentically true to herself? And I think that's where this starts to, the film, that's the launching pad for it. She's at the height of her career and her life, yet she's willing to sort of sabotage it because she's at this crossroads. And that's what's unique, is that you follow this sort of, I see it as an odyssey, an emotional and a sexual odyssey.
I love that.
I love
that.
Odyssey.
Emotional and sexual odyssey.
Put that on a t-shirt. Cool. I'm on a t-shirt. This is my emotional sexual odyssey.
I'm on it.
Boom.
I'm in the middle of it right now.
Working on it. I think so. I think that we entered into a very sacred sort of circle of trust very early, which is very important for a film like this, but also having a director that is also an actor changes things massively, right?
Amazing. Because, well, I mean, she would play all our roles.
Yeah, she almost played Samuel. She almost played Samuel, Romy and Jacob. And then she decided, sorry. No.
But because she'd written it, she also had such a strong understanding of the psychology of each of the characters. So she could sort of move into each of their perspectives. And also she'd already had an idea in her head of how she wanted it to be in terms of blocking. And then we would move that. We would change it, or Harris would say, well, I feel this is more, or we'd be allowed this open space, because the way it was lit, it wasn't like, okay, you have to hit your mark and you can't move from that place. We really had the whole, it was like a stage where you could create within the atmosphere of the set. So you could move anywhere really at any time.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of, I think, gave it an excitement as well. There'd be a general mapping of the scene, but if we wanted to change that, and so there's a spontaneity to it as well. Did I answer the question?
Oh, so well. And I think
what was the question?
I think having been an actor myself, I just know how I like to work as an actress, and having that freedom is incredibly important. Yet, you know, the director should have a plan together with the DP, of course. That was very important to all of us, Jasper Wolf, Dutch DP. But we just, you know, we prepared very well, and then in the moment we could let go and really have the electricity be there between them and take little risks within kind of a safe environment.
There were two. Oh, the motel or the hotel?
Exactly, motel,
The
hotel.
cheap motel.
They're very different.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Helena describes that scene, the motel scene, as a relationship all in one.
Yes, in 12 hours.
In 12 hours.
However long
Because you
they are.
run the gamut. I love that. I actually hadn't occurred to me because you didn't tell us that
No.
when we were shooting it. But it's like, explain it.
Well, they go through all the different chapters that I think it's like falling in love, getting to know each other, exploring the sexual dynamic that they have. But it's also fighting. They're being embarrassed. They're getting a little bored. Then they're laughing
up.
Yeah, they're breaking up. They're
Yeah.
laughing together. So it's the whole. It's kind of the whole story, but it's very condensed in this. And so it took a lot from them, because technically that's incredibly hard to do. And because we also said this scene is about performance, they are meeting each other for the first time a little longer. They've of course spoken, but always within the company, and they've never been, you know, alone, really alone. And so it's the first time where they, you know, really get to know each other, and also try to find this specific dynamic that, you know, will carry them through the rest of the film. And we wanted to make this very human. We wanted a lot of humor in this scene. And so it demanded a lot from them. And it was our last shooting day. And we built it on a big stage. So they were literally alone.
It was the last day.
It was the very last day. And
Yeah.
and you were alone in there, because we light everything in a way, like Nicole said, that you don't have to stop and wait for lighting.
Yeah.
Because this is something that, as an actor, I find that really hard, when you're sitting, waiting, and then somebody calls you and you have to immediately be on your best game. And so we did it in a way, we did very long takes. So they had to know their lines like clockwork, and they were extremely good in it. I remember I was also outside of the space watching the monitor and just being in awe of them and thinking, this is what's going to define this movie, this scene.
But you also give us a lot of freedom. I think that's important to say, because like with dialogue, it often falls into place when you can like shift tiny things, and you were never like rigid with how something should be said or the exact. I think when you allow it to, you really explored it with us and allowed us to like push it into our own voices as well, and then within the actual dialogue, but the rhythm of it as well, you know, it was never like strict, which I think is important.
Yes, we have a genius composer, I think. His name is Cristobal. People might know him from The White Lotus, and he has this quality in his music that is very primal but yet playful. And that was very important to us, because even though we play the scenes with very high stakes, and sometimes they are blackmailing each other in a way where Romy can lose everything, her job, her marriage, her family, but yet for the audience, we thought it was incredibly important to always signal this is a sexual game. It's a fable. It's a comedy of manners. It's never, you know, we're not watching a documentary. We're really playing with all these different themes, and you are allowed to laugh and you're allowed to be aroused. And the music does that in a genius way. And he uses a lot of their breath from scenes. He just samples it, and then he has these wolf sounds and these dog sounds, and it's incredibly interesting. And I
Cacophony of sound.
yes. And we have, of course, great needle drops. We have Father Figure, which is one of my favorite songs ever. We have In Excess song. We have a lot of songs that are more from Harris's generation, and Esther McGregor, who plays Nicole's daughter, and Sophie Wilde, who plays Esme.
And your friends who wrote the
Yes, my friends from
Brave.
Yellow Claw, they created the music for the
Yellow Claw.
Yeah, the DJs, Yellow Claw.
I mean, I don't know if it's important. It just feels very authentic. It feels very human. That's what it felt like to me. And I wanted to be a part of something that was, I suppose, not playing into what had already been done. I felt like it's something I haven't seen before. And the way in which power is dealt with in the film, where it sort of moves and it's constantly in play in a way. And I think it's okay when a woman says, well, actually, even though I'm very powerful, I don't want to be powerful right now. I would prefer to be dominated. And that's very complicated when you deal with those issues. But I think it was done with sort of a nuance and a delicacy by Helena. So you're not quite sure when it's happening. Can you speak about that? I'm going to help you out.
I think everything you're saying is right. I think, of course, up until now, almost all stories have been told by men. And it's interesting that women are getting a little bit more space. And I think these stories are just different. They're not better at all. I think we're very much in conversation with stories that were told by men, because my inspiration came from all the classical plays I did, which is Shakespeare, Ibsen, O'Neill. They're all men. All the plays that I ever did in my life were written by men. And then we're very much inspired by the thrillers from the 90s, who were all directed and written by men. And we are not saying, oh, we don't want them. We are saying, look, we are sort of like, or at least I love to, take a lot from those stories and use those archetypes and then make it into my own story. And of course, a female gaze is different than a male gaze. And so it's just like Nicole said, I think what we hope the movie is something unique and fresh and new and modern and fun. And that's why we like that it is told from a female's perspective, but we are including the men as well. The film is just as much about masculinity as it is about femininity. It is asking questions about who am I supposed to be as a man? What am I allowed to do?
Yeah, I love that, where it's like a struggle. We're both sort of in a struggle, because what's interesting on screen is the struggle.
Yes, I agree.
And I think they're both sort of in a weird way, they're healing each other. And that's unbeknownst to them.
Yes. And they're both in a crisis. They're both asking, who am I? She's maybe more in a midlife crisis, and he's just starting out. His first steps into the world, into society, his first maybe sort of job and future. And so they're both meeting each other in a moment of vulnerability. And I think they're both Sop and Dom. I think that changes all the time. He's also very vulnerable when he asks me, can you hold me? It's not like he's constantly like being the Dom and she's being the Sop at all. They're constantly shifting and trying to have power over each other, which I think is really funny and also very moving.
I mean, I always saw it and read it like, Samuel comes into this environment that is somewhat foreign to him. He's an intern in a corporate environment that he's never been in. He has a desire to be there and progress to the next stage, whatever, he has ambition. But separate to that, I think he encounters Romy and sees something in her that is kind of yet to be like challenged and fulfilled, and perhaps in himself as well. And so he starts the game of kind of piercing her facade a little bit and seeing what will happen and seeing if she will, how she'll respond, and does it intrigue her? Does it turn her on? I don't know. Like, does it turn me on? And then you start to understand that when someone has had so much like reverence and respect in a position of power, sometimes actually they need the opposite, right? Because they've just been surrounded by yes people and so much rigidity and respect that sometimes we
And what's interesting is he's able to sense it. He's so attuned that he's able to sense it more than her husband is, and that's fascinating, because he comes in and he's like, he can read her very quickly at different times. So I think that has nothing to do with age. It just has so when you talk about chemistry, the chemistry between Romy and Samuel is that they're able to sense each other. There's another level that's going on with them. It's not intellectual. It's sort of this weird visceral. And that's why it shifts and plays and pushes and pulls. And it's a game, but it's a very dangerous game.
Yes. Well said, both of you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think they
you
really
so much.
They're good girl and good boy.
Good boy.
I think they really see a vulnerability in each other. You know, and they and like Samuel says at a certain moment, we're like two children playing, which of course scares Romy a lot, that sentence. But in a way, it's true. Or two animals playing, or so they see a vulnerability in each other, a woundedness, and they want to heal that, and they can do that through playing these games of power.
Yeah.
And that is what they're doing. They're both traumatized, and whatever that trauma is, we have to kind of make up ourselves as an audience. We get a little bit of help with that, but not too much. But they recognize a wound in each other, and that is why they kind of cling like that. And you often feel that when it kind of feels maybe a little bit like a addictive and a toxic love, but it can at the same time be very healing. And they're just playing these games with each other, and they heal because of it.
I always liked that. You know, when the other day someone spoke about Samuel not existing for real.
Yeah.
And being like a
Fantasy. Yes.
I liked that, and we spoke about that a little bit because we tried not to like have him live in the real world so much with like factual backstory, and I always kind of that helped because
I never talked about that.
we never did, but we did because there was a lot in the script that kind of
Secret
suggested
conversations going on.
Yeah.
Oh, because you could say, of course, on some level, you could say, because the film starts and finishes with a climax, so you could say that everything in between is a fantasy. And maybe a sexual fantasy, so that a myth, like a fairy tale, a fable, and he appears almost in a fairy tale manner because he's with the dog, and he calms the dog down in this like kind of magical way, and so we're constantly playing with like, is he really there? Is she imagining him? Is she making him up? But of course, it's also important to see the movie on a very human level where you can relate to every situation. But I like the freedom of that kind of thinking.
Yeah. No, it wasn't like we were even intellectualizing that too much in the shoot, but I just liked to hear about it. It was interesting.
Yeah. And it makes total sense. It just never occurred to me when I was...
No.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with it. I have to be in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We got asked this yesterday. Be so proud
That's
of yourself.
right, in the
yeah,
Q&A.
and we were all like,
Oh, shucks.
well, but no, there are. I'm proud of all of them. I mean, the hotel stuff was hard because it was a lot of changing. So I'm proud of that stuff.
I'm proud of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't think you dissect it up. It works if it works for you, and because it works viscerally, and hopefully it's primarily makes you feel something. You walk out of it, whether you're angry, turned on, intrigued, hypnotized, whatever you have, the response, hopefully that promotes discussion. And that's exciting, you know? Let's go.
Very.
I'm very proud of everything they did. I think some of these scenes are hard, like the interrogation scenes in the basement office, you know, the way they hold those scenes. And so it's so fun to watch. I can't get enough of them. I noticed myself really waiting every time for certain scenes between the two of them because I'm just so excited by their performances. So I'm so incredibly proud of that.
I'm proud of our dancing at the rave.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Dancing.
Well, I'm obsessed with that. I loved doing it. We did that for, yes, exactly. I'm like, let's go again. Can we do it again? Do it again. Do it again. And then I'd be like, I love this, Harris. Remember?
It's true.
Yeah.
I love
True.
dancing, jumping.
Yeah.
I
We got
loved
lost in the
it.
crowd. I
Yeah,
had to
and-
find Nicole, and she was like, "Oh, I actually don't know where she is."
And everyone in the whole scene was like, they were extras, but they were all so good at that. They came in, even though they haven't read the whole script, it seemed like they knew what they were making.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
thank you to them. Anyone who's in that rave scene.
Yeah, they
Yes.
got this
We
timing.
love you.
Yes. The rave scene is kind of like the climax of the whole movie. It really was so much fun to do. And you see it on screen that they were actually having fun. So were we behind the camera.